between 20% and 100%, and we are waiting for all the details in a decree that will be published today or tomorrow about all the projects that are really concerned about it. But it's an important measure because public procurement is representing 10% of the GDP in France, so it's a lot of economic and a big step in economic demand of circular products. So it's a big thing for us and for the IMEC. So for a last point, I wanted to talk about the extended producer responsibility. We have a big reform on that. The principle of extended producer responsibility, it's a European principle. It implies that economic actors, so manufacturers, distributors, importers, who place on the market products that are generating waste, take responsibility for the management of this waste. So in order to best respond to this principle, the missions of the EPR schemes, so these channels have been extended, notably to support re-employment, not just recycling, but re-employment, reuse, and promote integration through all the reuse systems. So the contribution to these schemes are modulated in the form of a bonus and malus. So you have a bonus when the environmental performance of your product is good. So for example, taking into account the quantity of material used, the incorporation of recycled material, durability, repairability, reusability. And you have a malus on your product, so the producer has to pay more for the gestion of the waste if the product has bad environmental performance criteria. Each channel must also create a fund dedicated to finance repair. And I will just present you to finish all the new EPR channels, all the new EPR schemes, and the extension of certain existing channels. So if you see on the screen, you have in blue you have the French sectors, in red the European, and when there is a red, you have new sectors and the extension of sectors in France. So we have we counted like 29 EPR sectors, so it's a lot if you compare to just the European sectors that are mandatory. So it's a big step for us, and we have to create those channels. So how to say? Yes, I understand that it's a little bit technical if you don't know that EPR schemes. So I hope I was clear for it, but I am here for questions if you have.
Okay, thank you very much, Marline. Yeah, maybe we don't have a lot of time. I had one question for you. Is when you see at the legislation, there's quite a lot of requirements for companies also to register the stuff. So how do French companies see that? What does it mean for the administrative load? And would this be an additional barrier for companies coming from outside of France? What do you think?
Yeah, we have a lot of changes of new regulations that comes in France, and sometimes we have like some new measures, but we don't have the details about the application of this, like the banning or the obligation of doing something. like the obligation of doing a diagnosis on food waste is mandatory since 2021, but we don't have the text to apply it. So it's complicated quite for now for companies that they have to be really aware of all the changes, and it's demanding some energy and some work. And all these EPR schemes implies to join an organization that takes that responsibility for you and you pay for it, but it's for every regulation, it's the same. So I think we have to go through this because these changes are like necessary, but all the time to make it right, it's complicated for the firm, and the INEC is here too to explain all the changes and explain to all that are non jurists and that are not aware about all these new evolutions about circular economy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, also because of the time, maybe that's a good way, like, yeah, what if you're a Dutch or a foreign company and you come into France or a Dutch company, what what do you encounter and how you can help? Maybe that's a good step to go to the presentation of Leontine Schijf of the Dutch embassy, and your senior circular economy advisor there. So
Yeah.
Take the floor, Leontine.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you so much. And thank you, Marline, for explaining what's happening in France. And that's why it's so interesting if you are a Dutch company with a circular innovation to come to France. My name is Leontine Schijf. I am the Senior Advisor Circular Economy here at the Embassy in Paris. But note that we also have an office in Lyon and in Nantes. So we really work throughout the whole of France. Next slide, please. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to understand what happens at an embassy and what we do. So I'm going to kind of walk you through a day in the life, if you will. What happens when I'm now at my home office or at the office, and what do I do? First thing is analysis. I do this for you, for our stakeholders, the Dutch companies, to know what's happening in France. I make sure I have a big network. I keep expanding the network and I know the right people, because if you have a question and you want to connect to a potential business partner or another innovation partner, find a collaborator, then I can help you with the network. The third one is politics. It's not as relevant for you, but I want to say it that, of course, behind the scenes, we're always working on policy and making sure the regulations are aligned on a European level. And the fourth one is the organization of events or participating in events like this, so we can really connect the French and the Dutch together. Last year, we organized some innovation missions. We organize webinars. We organize, hopefully soon again, different business fairs to really bring the networks together, and all, of course, under the umbrella of saving the planet. Next slide. Why France? Well, Marline already explained there are a lot of different things happening in France, and there's a huge ambition to become circular. And therefore, from the embassy, we support this transition because we see an opportunity for Dutch businesses to share their expertise in this field. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to explain to you the 4 sectors that are most important for us right now at the embassy to support. That also means that we don't just support these 4 fields. We support any circular innovation, but we organize more events on this. And we have a bigger network on these. The first one being plastic. As Marline also said, France has a big ambition to really steer away from single-use plastics and create a circular plastic system. And I wanted to include this little picture. You see an innovation process that is being done for Carrefour, for the supermarkets, to package, in this case, lettuce in paper packaging, which is difficult because it's a fresh product and needs to stay fresh. And this paper also needs to be recyclable. And what is interesting is that it seems such a small thing. Lettuce bags, Okay, well, yeah, we all buy lettuce from time to time, but what is the impact of this? Actually, in France, there are 290 million units of lettuce sold per year. If we can change all of this from plastic to paper, we would save a lot of waste. The second one is fashion. I included a picture of the French brand 1083. They produce their jeans locally within 1083 kilometers, because that's the biggest distance from the two furthest cities in France. And their jeans are also what they call infinite. It's made from recycled polyester, what can be again recycled after the life cycle of a pair of jeans, which is a great example of how the French fashion sector is trying to become circular. Third one is building and construction, and that is mostly linked to two major projects ongoing right now in the Paris region. They are expanding the metro lines, which generates a lot of infrastructure activity. And the second one is the Olympic Games, which will take place in Paris in 2024. And again, of course, there's a lot of buildings to be built, housing for athletes, sports complexes, but it's important, and it's also an ambition of the region to do this in a sustainable and circular way, which is not always easy. So if you're a Dutch company with expertise in these fields, you should come to us. And then the fourth one is food, and especially food waste. It's an important topic for France. We love food over here. And this year, we're going to make it an extra priority to organize events in the field of korte ketens, of short chains, and urban farming, because those are also important ingredients towards a circular economy. Again, if you don't fit within these four sectors, don't worry. I want to give you three little examples of Dutch companies I've helped go into France that don't fit into this. The first one is Swap Beats. We all know them. We all recognize them. I'm very happy when I recognize them when they're outside here on my street by the blue tire. And they just successfully launched in last September in Paris. The second one is Join the Pipe. I'm not going to talk about it because we have a speaker from Join the Pipe who's going to talk after us. And then the third one, I include a little picture of the Louvre, you know, the museum, which is just a teaser because I can't say what's happening exactly. All I can say is that I'm helping a Dutch business get their circular product into the Louvre. So to be continued. Next slide. That was it for my presentation, the priority themes, the different ways in which we can help you by analysis with different networks and events. But for my conclusion, I also want, next slide, to emphasize that we're doing this together, that the Netherlands is working on a circular economy because we set that goal to have a circular economy in 2050. On the next slide, I also want to emphasize that France is also underlining this ambition, wanting to create a circular economy for this generation and future generations. So on next slide, why not collaborate? I think it will be much easier if we create that circular world together. So thank you for your attention. On the next slide, you see my email address. Don't hesitate to contact me if you need me with any business support. I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leontine. Maybe there's a question from the audience as well, but what I was wondering for companies who are thinking about doing business in France, what is a good moment to contact the embassy? Do you have to be prepared, or and what does the process look like if you want to work with you?
Yeah, first of all, I would say make sure that your circular innovation works in the Netherlands. Because when you come to France, the French will ask if you have proof of concept of how that worked in the Netherlands. So that's important for your internationalization. And then come to us with your questions. Do you need market information? Do you need specific network? Do you need us to introduce you to special organizations? We can help with those things. And the process looks like, yeah, well, it's as easy as that. Send me an email explaining why you want to go to France and what your barrier is to get there if you need extra information or context. And then I will be in contact with you. We'll have a little video call and then we take it from there.
Okay, thank you very much. At the moment, I don't see other questions directly for you in the chat, but maybe they'll come up later. So I think that's a good moment also for the time that I'll stop sharing my presentation and I'll give the floor to David.
Yes, hi, thank you, Dan. I see the host has disabled attendee screen sharing.
I have to see how I can. How can I? Sorry.
Diane, if you make David a co-host, then usually he can share.
Yeah. I cannot make you a co-host.
All right. If it takes too much time, we can also. You have the presentation.
Yeah, I'll start. Start talking, and I'll look for the presentation here.
Okay. Well, I also see we are a bit in time constraints, so I'll just start explaining a bit. So Join the Pipe is a Dutch enterprise existing now for 15 years. And since a few years, we have now a new concept, which is city water. And with this concept, we have entered the French market since 2.5 years now. And basically, the concept exists of two elements. On the one hand, we propose reusable water bottles made from sugarcane. And on the other hand, we have refill stations so that you have a reusable bottle. And once you finish it, you can easily refill it at one of the tap stations. And in the Netherlands, we now are partnering. We have a customer, which is Albert Heijn. So you'll find the bottles there, and they're already pre-filled with tap water. Yeah, and in France, we made the step 2.5 years ago. I see it's here. We have 10 minutes. Okay, maybe it's good to show the video. It will explain everything perfectly.
I'm not sure it works with me. I'm so sorry.
All right, if it doesn't work, it's fine.
Yeah.
I explained briefly what is Join the Pipe about, what is city water. Then to the question why we entered the French market. I could come up with 1,000 reasons. Back then, we really wanted to beat the big water brands like Evian. We wanted to prove that you can actually sell tap water in France. But I think that the most important reason is shown on the right side. Doing business in France is also drinking a lot of wine. And yeah, this was at an event 2.5 years ago. So when I started working for Join the Pipe, I was put on the French market, and we had the first trade show in Paris, which was Equipe Hotel. And on the left side, you see me and my cousin. In the beginning, I was alone, and I used my family a lot because my mother is French, I'm half French. And yeah, the family helped me a lot to kick off in France. But eventually I figured out that I needed some more professional help. So next slide. On the right side, you see me in a restaurant in Lyon with my new intern. And why I'm showing this picture is because we were attending an event in Lyon. On the left side, you see it's at the Holland's Culinary House. It was a stand, shared space with other exhibitors, organized by the Dutch embassy actually. And well, the trade show didn't really work out well for us, but at the end of the event, we closed off with a nice dinner with a bœuf bourguignon and a wine. And we asked our neighbors to take a picture. And well, apparently they were working for one of the biggest distributors in France. And they became one of our biggest clients so far. So I think this was a great kickoff with my new colleague. So next slide. So what are the steps we've taken so far? So first, we had to really translate all the communication materials, meaning the flyers, the presentation, but also the website. I became a website builder. Yeah, you have to do everything yourself, but it's important to have this base before you send emails and you contact your potential clients. So this was the first step. And the second, we had to develop products. So if you go to the next one, we'll see, next slide, yeah. We developed new bottles, the Paris city bottle and the Lyon city bottle. In itself, it's not very complicated, but for example, the sealing, we really had to figure out like what is important in the French market, what do they find appealing, and how can you convince them to buy such a novel product, because it's a reusable bottle filled with tap water. In France, they had never heard about that. They were a fan of Evian and everything. So suddenly in the beginning, we sold Dutch tap water in France. So it was quite new. Yeah, so we had to explain this. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, third step was we had to obtain certificates. In France, everything is quite formal and quite regulated. So especially for the water fountains, we needed to obtain certificates. And once we had these three set in place, we could go to the next step, and it was getting on the ground. This is the most important step, because this is where you meet the clients. We went to trade shows, we went to, we did promotional activities, we did guerrilla actions. So on the next slide, you'll see, yeah, this was one of the guerrilla actions we did. It was in front of the headquarters of one of the biggest supermarket chains. Our approach of sending LinkedIn messages and calling the people didn't really work. So in the end, we just decided to go there and showcase our products, distribute them among all the employees. And yeah, slowly by slowly, everyone came out and we handed out the bottles, and we got more and more context. And in the end, we got the right context that we wanted. So sometimes you have to be a bit creative. Next slide. Establishing partnerships. This was also a great step, because you cannot do it yourself. You need partners in this process, distributors, resellers, but also promotional partners. Right now, we're collaborating with a basketball club from Lyon, just to create this brand awareness. Next step. Joining associations. I would say this is a very important step in France, because it's a culture where everyone knows one another through these kinds of association networks. If you're not part of them, then you're a bit seen as the foreigner who's not very familiar to the market. So yeah, they will not prefer you over someone who is already involved in an association. And then final step, we expanded the team. Me and my colleague were really working from Holland, but now we hired a local sales agent in Paris and a few interns in Lille who could really work on the ground. And this is, in the end, I think, the most important step. So it's an iterative process. It's constantly evolving. It's always pivoting, changing. And yeah, we're still in it. In the end, now we have a turnover of 250,000, I think, in 2.5 years. But I have to be honest as well, in these times, it's very difficult to have success there. But yeah, we're still confident to succeed after. Next. Yeah, so a few key learnings. I think for future entrepreneurs in France, you really have to know that, yeah, I was very optimistic in the beginning, very driven. I thought like, hey, it's a big market, a lot of potential. And it is, it has enormous potential, but it's not an easy market at all. You need a lot of perseverance, a lot of courage, a lot of power and energy to make this happen. And yeah, be prepared for a big challenge, I would say. Next. If you start, then use the embassy, because the Dutch embassy is great to kick off. They have a great network. They have all the contacts that you need. The events that you need as well, like the CIRA in Lyon where we went to. So use this network to kick off, I would say. And then third, receiving feedback is very, it's essential, I would say, in any market. But in France, for us, this was very important, because we had all these assumptions of that it would work in the Netherlands, but it was not. It would not mean that it would also work in France. So we had to talk to many people to understand what were the barriers for our products and how we could change, even if it was just in communication, just to get that feedback was important. Yeah, it's a big link to this learning, but also good to know is that the French are not so direct and honest as the Dutch. Well, we're known to be direct and honest, which is great in doing business. The French are not so much, so it's difficult to know what they think of your product. So in the end, what helps is just to push and be direct yourself, and then try to see if they respond to that. Next one. It's a very hierarchical culture, very formal and top down. For me, I was a student before I just entered the business, and I was put in the French market. It was quite a switch, I have to say. Yeah, it's a different culture than the Dutch. The Dutch, we are like, hey, hoe gaat het met je? You know, very informal. And there, everything is very strict, I would say. The emails are super long. And yeah, it takes more time than the approach we have here. Next. Finally, the last key learning is that now, especially in Corona times, there is a new development, which is that made in France products come first, meaning that they prefer local products over foreign products. So we got that response many times now. And if you really want to succeed there, maybe you should consider to produce locally. Yeah, I think these are the 6 key learnings. I wish you a bon voyage et bon courage if you're going to the French market, and yeah, have a good trip.
Thank you very much, David. Yeah, I have a question. Maybe other people have questions. Well, I think we have a few minutes left. You talked a lot about how you sort of adapted your maybe your proposal on products for the French market. And I was wondering, do the French, do they have the same approach to circular? Are they interested in circular options, or is that not the case? We stop in a minute now. Sorry, David. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they are quite aware already since a long time. For example, there's this concept of le vrac, which is everything is sold in bulk goods in supermarkets, for example. That is something that's quite new here in the Netherlands, I would say. Not super new, but it is already existing for many years in France. So the refill, reuse, reduce concept that we use is also, yeah, it's very applicable there. They're very known to it. But still, the Dutch are always perceived as the most innovative and most sustainable. So yeah.
That's a USP when you're starting.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay, we have a few seconds left. I would like to ask Marline what we could do better to cooperate. There's still a question for you in the chat from Joost Kluiver. Maybe you can have direct contact to get this out. And yeah, I'm sorry, yes. I think we're kicked out.